Hi, I'm Janet Loren Hill. I'm an artist in residence here at McCall Center, and I'll be showing you today how to make a pyramid with some texture, or however you want to make your own pyramid look different and unique, but how to stuff a form and how to take this into your own crochet practice. But we'll start from the very basics, just how to make your first stitches, how to put the yarn on your hook. So from very beginning to a fully realized 3D form. All right, so if you have time, come along with me and we'll learn how to crochet. So today for our pyramid, you just need a skein of yarn or a ball of yarn, a crochet hook, scissors, and some fabric scraps to stuff your pyramid with. The size of your crochet hook just needs to be big enough to hold the size of your yarn. So this yarn is your typical kind of mid-weight chunky yarn. And this crochet hook is a 7mm crochet hook. But if you're, at the craft store, you can pick your yarn and then look at the crochet hook and see if that line of yarn will just hinge under the ledge of the hook. Stitch that you're doing. And you can see that as I move, the tension will get too strong. So I'll kind of pull the yarn and get more yarn to come through to loosen that tension. All right, so I would suggest that you do this for a little bit, just make a really long chain just to get used to this feeling in your hands. And if any of this starts to slip off, you can always just start again, lay it over your hand, wrap it around that finger, and put that middle finger and thumb on the knot just below the hook. Pull through the hoop. And like anything that you practice, like a dance move, you'll get faster at it the more you do them. So you can see some longtime crocheters who will, whip through these chains. All right, great thing about crochet is that if you mess up at any time, you can just pull the tail and undo these chains. So now that we've practiced that for a little bit, we're going to go ahead and start from scratch and start our sphere. Okay, so again, laying it over. Oh, first we'll tie it to the crochet hook. Lay over, wrap it around our finger, put that pointer and thumb. We're going to chain, which is the simple stitch we learned just before, 10 chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 chains. Now we're going to do a different stitch. This is the only other stitch we'll learn. It's called a double crochet. And we're going to use our first chains here to shift it vertical and become our first double crochet stitch. We're going to go into our third chain on the braid. So a double crochet stitch requires that we put the hook underneath the yarn, we wrap it around, and we enter it into the chain, and then we pull through the yarn so that we get 3 hoops on our hook. That's how you know you're on the right track. Then we'll pull the yarn through 2 of the hoops. You have 2 left. pull the yarn through the other two. So now you have your double crochet right there. And you've brought up those other two chains at the same height. So we're just going to double crochet across the chains. So yarn over, insert into the chain, pull through, yarn over, pull through two, yarn over, pull through two, yarn over, insert into the chain, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 double crochets and our sort of fake double crochet at the front. All right, so now we've reached one row. You can think about it as the bottom column. We're going to chain 2 to get our height for our next row. And then we're going to turn our crochet so that we're on the back now. We're going to start our double crochet again. We're going to yarn over, put through the first chain, pull up that yarn, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And on the next one, we're going to decrease the width of this triangle, which is going to become our pyramid. So by doing that, we're just going to, instead of yarning over, we're going to go directly into the chain, yarn over, pull through, go directly into the next chain, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So that is decreasing. So we just basically took those 2 chains and turned them into one double crochet. So we sort of pinched it in, right? So we yarn over and do just a regular double crochet through the next 2. The rest of the chains on this level. So each row of this triangle, we're going to decrease 1 double crochet. So each time we're cinching it in to that point of the triangle. Now we're going to, again, at our edge, we've reached it, we're going to chain 2 to get our height and turn it over to the other side. Do a regular double crochet. In that first stitch, and now in our next one, decrease. So pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over in the next chain, pull through to get your 3, 1, 2, 3, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and double crochet in the next chain until you get to the end again. Chain 2, get our height, and flip it again. When you get to the top rows, you'll sort of run out of as many chains. So this row we can still do a regular double crochet, but the next one we will probably just have to decrease. So we'll decrease in this next one. You always want to try to decrease in the center of a piece Otherwise, the warp on the edge will get a little wonky. So here on this final row, we'll just do one decreasing stitch. And then you can do one chain to sort of finish the point of that triangle. We'll cut about a 3-inch tail, so you can sew it in or weave it in later. And we'll just tie it with a knot. Okay, so there we have a triangle. So I have made a few other triangles for and then a square for the bottom. Square is super simple. It's the same process. You do 10 chains and your double crochet columns, you just don't pinch it in, right? So you keep it always just straight double crochets, flipping it back to front. So now we can take these pieces and put one triangle per side to build our pyramid. So the way I'm going to do that is use a simple slip stitch to connect the sides of these. So I'm going to take 2 triangles, and I know that they're going to get stitched together here. So I can take the same thread, do my slip knot on my crochet hook, and I can look for those 2 sides of a stitch, the front and the back, go through both of them, and go through the other one on the other triangle. Move my tail to the other side, yarn over, pull through, and also pull through the hoop on the hook. So here on the next stitch, I'm putting the hook through both the front and the back of the stitch and the front and the back of the stitch of the second triangle. Yarning over, pulling through, and pulling through the hoop on the hook. Okay, so it's starting to merge these. So I'm going to keep doing that. And it can get kind of tricky at the top here. So you might need to work it through those stitches. As long as you're securing them together. It will come into its 3D form. Once you're at the top, so here I have them secured together. I have my final hoop at the top. You can make it a lot bigger. Cut your same sort of 3-inch tail and tie it through to secure those stitches. And again, we'll weave all these in to make it less haphazard as we keep going. So now we're just going to do the same thing with the same edges of our next triangle piece. Now we're going to stitch together this seam here. So you can think about, as we start to see this come together, you can make any shape by figuring out how to make flat pattern pieces and then stitching them together almost as if you have a past history in ceramics, you might do this with slab building, hand building, or if you've done pattern sewing, similar idea. Okay, so we've reached the top again. Do one more stitch just to get us to the peak of this other one. Tail and pull through. You can start to see. You can also make a smaller pyramid and have a triangle bottom, which I might actually do because this perfectly fits in there. Or you can make a wider, larger pyramid by adding another triangle and using a square bottom. So there's lots of experimentation that you can do. But first, let's stitch together these two edges now. And we'll bring all of our tails to the top. Same as before, just stitching the corners together, and then we'll follow through down along this edge with our slip stitches. And always at the pinnacle, kind of gotta find your stitches. I get a little confused with all the different meeting triangles, but you want to make sure that each side is stitched to each other at the top. And keep your tails out of your way. And then once you've managed to stitch them all together, you can make one last chain and stitch those, cut your tail. Now you just have the bottom, right? So it's starting to show itself as a pyramid. Now we just gotta stitch the bottom on. So here you're gonna think about it as, instead of stitching two pieces together, you're going around the perimeter. So we'll do slip stitches all along the edges. And before we put that bottom in, we can stuff it with anything, any sort of fabric scraps we have lying around. Maybe you have an old shirt that you want to cut up, just to give it some of that volume and stability, so it'll stand up on its own. You can also pull these tails in here and they can contribute to our stuffing. So all I did is took the hook, put it underneath, and pull it out of one of the top holes. And you can just yarn over and pull through each tail strand. And that will hide it. pull it through. Oh, 3. Okay, one last tail. Sometimes you kind of gotta finagle it through it open. There you go. Okay. So we have these. I might actually, before we get too far with stitching our bottom on, I might pull through any of these extra tails just so that I can push them underneath. So there's one there. Basically just turning them inwards. So they're oriented towards the inside of the pyramid. Okay, I think I got all of them. So we can push those down in there as part of our stuffing. Bring back our other fabric scraps. So you can, really push the stuffing up into the pinnacle of the pyramid. You can stuff it as densely or loosely as you want. If you want to turn this cone into a series of 5 cones that attach to each other, maybe you want it to start to kind of arc, you might not stuff it as strong. You can think about too, right? These gaps start to show whatever you put inside. So that's a possibility too. Or maybe you pull through and start to make texture with your pyramid. You could put natural leaves or pine needles in here. These tails on this bottom triangle, I'm also gonna stitch them into the side with slip stitches. So just taking the tail, I'll show you that again. Taking the tail, going underneath the boundary stitch, pulling through and pulling through the tail, underneath the boundary stitch, pulling through, oops, pulling through the tail, just so that that's not hanging around. That I can cut that secured in there. With this one, it's another way of securing a tail, different than using it as stuffing. Next one, pull through. Okay, now I have an easier, cleaner thing to work with. Take my yarn over here, make my same slip knot, put it on the hook, wrap it around the hand and the finger, have that same hold. And we'll put one point into a corner. And we're just again under that front and back of each triangle's stitches. Okay, and then we're going into the next stitch here. Front and back, front and back. If your stuffing is, has a mind of its own, kind of keep one thumb secured. You can use your thumb here to hold it down too. And we're pulling through all those stitches. Just doing a slip stitch around. You can also use your body to hold these in. Sometimes I'll work with this on my stomach, but not today. You wouldn't see. You can use the surface you're working on to hold this in. Or you can take some of the top bit out and work on your boundary. And then once you start to close it up, then you can fill that top layer. And if you have a little bit of that tail, you can just push it back in there. Always going under those 2 stitches on both sides. The great thing about yarn is it's sort of flexible, right? So if one of your triangles is a little smaller than another one, you can stretch it to reach the last corner. So you're kind of just stretching out those fibers to reach the tip. So now that I have this a little bit more closed, I have a bit of a pocket. Now I can stuff that last layer in. Was she there? Yeah. Okay, we'll do our final side. And sort of loose tails, you can pull it into the center of the pyramid by just kind of pushing it down into. And before I finish these last 3 stitches, this is when I like to really shape the shape. So I'll kind of push it almost like it's clay. And push it around, see if I want to add more stuffing. If there's any sort of larger stitches, I can push them in so they look a little more uniform. This could also be a point where you added other things. You know, some of those pine needles could go in on the top. Looks like I need more stuffing at the top of the pyramid. Push some of this up there. And then add a little bit more at the bottom. And then we'll stitch up our final stitches here. Once you get to the corner, you just want to find that corner stitch and the first stitch going up the side of this pyramid and pull through both of those. You'll end up with a final hoop. We'll cut a tail, pull through, do some more manicuring of our shape. And this final tail, again, you can kind of just find a wider gap, bring the hook through another gap, pull that tail through, and you can kind of keep bringing it along through the shape. And then you can at a certain point, chop off the end once it's been pulled through a few times. Push that last bit in. If I'm looking at this, I'm kind of excited about different parts where this fabric pulls through. So I might pull through some of these and get some texture to this pyramid shape. In crochet, you know, not only is it easy to make things with it, it's fast, but it also has all these possibilities with these gaps between its knots to play with adding shapes together or building texture. So maybe I would keep doing that and I would have kind of a fuzzy pyramid to play with. And once you make one, then you can start to tweak it, right? So if I wanted a taller triangle, I could start with more chains. Maybe I do 20 chains instead of 10 and slowly pinch it in to get a taller pyramid. Or I could pinch in more slowly. I could do a row of all double crochet in between a decreasing row. That's going to give me a different shaped pyramid.